In this video, we'll demonstrate how you can create UX components that load faster by using static HTML versions of the components. So you can see here we have a UX component that is reasonably large, not too big. And when we run it, you can see that the component runs, it's got a number of controls, and it's got a list control underneath that. So let's now make a UX component that has a button that opens up this component in a window. So we'll go here to the parent UX here, we'll add a button. And this button will open up child UX in a window, and we'll turn off data caching. So let's go ahead now and run this. And we'll see that when we press the button, there's a short delay while the child component is rendered. So let's now create a new version of this button that uses static HTML. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to duplicate this button by pressing Control D. And then I'm going to go into the button definition here. And I'm going to turn on Use Static HTML. And what that's going to do is it's going to build a static HTML version of the component. And it's also going to prompt me whether I'd like to add a property to that child UX to say that every time that child UX is saved, should the static HTML version automatically be refreshed. So I'm going to say yes over there. So now the static HTML version of the component is created. And let's go ahead now and run this. So I'll do a full preview. So this is the original way of opening the component. You can see there's the working message. So it's still pretty fast, but because it's not a really complicated component, but nevertheless there was that working message. Now here's the static HTML version. And we can see that, let's just do that again. So go here, working, and then go here. And you can see that it loads faster. And depending on the size of the component, the difference could be quite significant. So in this case, the component is reasonably small, so the difference is not that significant. But as I say, on larger components, the difference will be quite significant. So this ability to use static HTML applies not only to buttons that open up child components in Windows, but it also applies to embedded components, tab UIs, etc. So and also A5W pages. So let's go take a look at this in more detail. So if we go now to this child component here, and let's start out by creating an A5W page to load the component. So I'm going to go here and say save page. And normally when you create the page, this by default, the run component using static HTML will be unchecked. So I'm going to check it now. And then if I run this, this is going to create a page. So I can go ahead now and run this page. And we'll see that the page loads extremely quickly because it's using a static HTML version. So that's how you can create A5W pages that use static HTML. Let's go now and create a tagged UI component. So I'll go here and say new tab UI. And I'll go to controls here, and I'll add the child component, and then I'll add the child components the second time. But in the second time, I'll go to the this open using static HTML property over there, and I'll check that property. So there go there. And you can see that we didn't get the prompt about creating static files because we've already done that once before. So I'll go and point out where that data is stored. So I'll go here and save this TUI. And then let's go ahead and run this now. So when this first button loads it, that's the child in the traditional way. So you'll see there's the working message. The second button loads the static version of the child component. So we can see that it loads faster. So there we go, and let's look at this again. So there's the working message, and then here's much faster loading. So the final thing that I want to point out is that if we go back to the parent component over here, and we say use an embedded component, so add control, embedded object, and we'll go here and we'll choose the child. And then you can see that for the embedded object, we also have the same option about using static HTML over there. So let's go ahead and save this now and run this. So there's the child component opening up in a window. And you can see here that the child component is opening up in an iframe, which means that the child component can have a completely different style than the parent. So let's go back to this child component here and go to properties. So continuing from the last video, in that last video we showed that the embedded child component had the same style as the parent component, but now we're going to change the style to something totally different, and we'll go here to the properties, and we'll change the style to say alpha dark green. And you can see here that we also have this property set here, create static HTML when component is saved. So when we go ahead now and we save this component, so let's just go make it dirty. So the component, actually it didn't go dirty because we didn't change it. We'll change it to dark rose. So now you can see it's gone dirty. When we save it now, the component is saved, and then the static file set is automatically created. And that's because this property has been set over here. So this property was set, and this property here says that every time we save this component, we'd like to create a static file called default.html. So default means that it's going to have the same name as the component, which is child UX. And when you save the component, you can create more than one static HTML file. So for example, you can see here right now we're only creating one static HTML file called default.html. And every time you save the component, you could, if you want, prompt for confirmation before the static HTML file is created. And finally, what you can do if you want, you can modify the HTML that is saved for each static file that is created. So I'm going to just leave these as defaults over there. Then I'm going to go back to the parent UX, and this is my embedded component. I'm going to change the on-page window size to be 6 inches by, let's make a width of say 10 inches. So we'll go ahead now and we'll save this. And we'll run it. And what we should see now is that the embedded component will render with a different style than the parent component. So there's our child component being rendered in the iframe over there. So what we've shown in these videos is how you can use the static HTML version to load the child UX much more quickly in the case of buttons that are defined using Action JavaScript, in the case of tab UIs, and also in the case of embedded components, and finally in the case of A5W pages that load components. Thank you very much for watching.